Hello everyone and welcome to another video here on the Cycling Dane Extra channel, and today we are looking at the big one, the Hell of the North, the third monument of the year, Paris-Roubaix or Paris-Roubaix, however you want to say it. And as always, I'm joined by Patrick Blake and we're going to be dissecting the favorites, the route, and also give our predictions at the end. But I mean, Patrick, Paris-Roubaix, Paris-Roubaix, yeah, what kind of stands out for you? I mean, Tom Boonen for me, Fabian Cancellara, Peter Sagan, Mathieu van der Poel, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's really been the Mathieu van der Poel, or dare I say, the Alps and de Koenig show the last couple of years, with Van der Poel and Philipsen finishing first and second in both of those editions. But yeah, I mean, before then, it's easy to forget, like, Dylan van Baarle won this race with that solo attack. It was a fantastic victory. Sonny Colbrelli's first, big, well, it was his first monument victory coming off of COVID, because obviously it was cancelled in COVID in October. That was just absolutely memorable day, ridiculous on so many levels. But I think the one which will always really stand out for me is Peter Sagan in 2018, the World Champs jersey, him catching up to Dillier and then sprinting at the end. I think that was one of Sagan's best victories. I think that's the one which I can hold most dearest.
One moment I also remember quite annoyingly is the woman trying to throw a cap into Mathieu van der Poel's back wheel. That was quite a weird moment. And then obviously John Degenkolb kind of getting the shoulder barge, and then afterwards Jasper Philipsen and Mathieu van der Poel checking up on him. But I mean, so many iconic moments, and we could spend the whole episode on that, but we won't do that. What does the route from Paris-Roubaix look like?
Yeah, it's worth noting that it doesn't actually start in Paris. It starts in Compiègne, something like that. It goes to Roubaix. Obviously, you know, that remains pretty constant every year on year. It is 259.2 kilometers this year. It includes 30 cobbled sectors, which accumulates to 54.5 kilometers of cobbles throughout the whole race. It's going to be a elapsed time of roughly 5.5 hours if last year is anything to go by, which is kind of about that. Obviously, your main parts throughout the whole course. Obviously, I'm not going to talk through every single cobble sector. We're here for an absolute age because there's 30 of them. They start at 90 kilometers through the race, and obviously they just keep coming. They just don't stop. It's relentless. And the main sectors that you're looking at are, obviously, there's 3 5-star sectors. For people who don't know, they're obviously categorized from 1-star to 5-star depending on their difficulty. There are 3 5-star sectors, that is the Trouet d'Alenbourg, the Mons-en-Pévèle, and then the Carrefour de l'Arbre. Those are all preceded by a category 4 sector as well, which really kind of adds to their difficulty because you don't get a lot of respite between that 4-star sector and the 5-star sector, which is really interesting. And you generally see a winning move going on the Mons-en-Pévèle. It's about an hour to go, just because that's where a lot of fatigue is settling in by that point. It's on the Carrefour de l'Arbre that we saw a couple of years ago, Wout van Aert puncturing, and where we were denied that opportunity to see him versus Mathieu van der Poel for the victory. Just the 3 5-star sectors in this race, and scattered in between there's a lot of 1 to 3-star sectors as well, which aren't too challenging for these riders. And then we end in Roubaix, obviously in the classic velodrome finish, where we have had the last 3 editions have been solo victories. The last group sort of victory, I guess you could say, was the Sonny Colbrelli 2021 win, where he was up against Florian Vermeersch and Mathieu van der Poel. So generally this race seems to favour a solo victor and one who is a puncher with a good finish at the end, who's got a really strong aerobic engine. And you generally see that time trialists fill out the top 10. Obviously we'll get into the favourites and stuff, but I feel like that's kind of most of the Paris-Roubaix course detail given to people.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Patrick. I mean, where to start? Mathieu van der Poel, 2-time defending champion, could make it 3, but I mean, last week we were kind of talking about a lot of statistics he could have achieved if he won that one. So I don't know if we should be talking about that. Maybe that's bad luck for Mathieu van der Poel. Yeah, if he actually did win 3, he would be the first rider to do so since Francesco Moser, which I think is quite extraordinary that Tom Boonen didn't do it, Cancellara didn't do it, obviously Sagan didn't do it, but it just shows how hard it is. You have to go back to the 80s for this. Your Museo didn't do it, etc., etc. But Mathieu van der Poel, sick at Tour Flanders, crashed at Tour Flanders, still third. How do you feel about his chances of defending his title this year?
I feel like Mathieu van der Poel is, in my opinion, still the favourite for this race. I think that being a 2-time champion, he knows how to ride this race. He is like in the absolute window of the perfect Paris-Roubaix rider at the moment. He's like the quintessential Paris-Roubaix rider at the moment. And yes, I think that maybe people's opinions or their confidence in his ability to win Roubaix may have been shook a little bit by the fact that he didn't win, I don't know, Flanders in absolutely, or at all, basically. He got dropped by Pogacar, but you have to remember that Roubaix is a different beast to the Tour of Flanders. It's pretty much very flat, and that does favour the heavier riders who can just produce absolute power, and Van der Poel is absolutely adept at that. And yeah, I think that, people shouldn't let that recency bias of Pogacar beating him at Flanders to cloud their vision. I think Van der Poel is still absolutely in the fight for this. And like you say, he was ill apparently going into the Tour of Flanders. So as long as he just doesn't interact with anybody seemingly in the next week up to sort of Paris-Roubaix, I think that he is still going to be the man to beat.
We've mentioned a few times about, well, not here, but like in the past, him and Philipsen won too, that very good team tactic that they did last year against Mads Pedersen and the year before as well, with Wout van Aert feeling the force of it. Yeah, Jasper Philipsen, how does he play into this? And obviously they also had another rider in top 10 last year, Gianni Vermeersch. So a very strong team all out. And do you think Jasper Philipsen is still that, I want to say plan B, but like he would have won it? Maybe he's a good backup plan in a way.
Yeah, I think he is. You're absolutely right. And part of Van der Poel's successes over the last 2 years have been because Philipsen has been there, and he just anchors that second group and really discourages the chase, because let's face it, nobody really wanted to bring Jasper Philipsen, one of the fastest sprinters in the world, to the finish line, because he would have just dusted them off anyway, which he ended up doing nonetheless. So I think Philipsen is honestly very integral to Van der Poel doing well on Sunday. If Philipsen isn't there, I think Van der Poel's going to have a tougher time of it to try and get rid of the other oppositions, because there's a lot of teams here who have not just their leader, but probably a backup leader as well. And I think that Philipsen needs to be on his kind of best game to do well here. I'm not sure how well Philipsen's doing. His recent races haven't been that great. He's been getting dropped, in like Dwarsdorf Landren, he was dropped quite early. He was kind of up in the fight in Gent-Wevelgem. He followed that Mads Pedersen attack, but then didn't really compete for the sprint in the end. So I'm not quite sure where to gauge Philipsen's format, but he really needs to be up there in order to help Mathieu van der Poel try and win this race.
Yeah, I think you're right. Where do you think Mathieu van der Poel attacks this year? Do you think he's going to play a bit different since that unknown factor of Tadej Pogacar is there?
Yeah, it's hard to say, because the race seems to open up earlier and earlier every single year. Obviously, there's that huge fight to get into the breakaway, which can last forever, seemingly. I mean, Van der Poel really attacked, you could say, last year on the Trouet Dannenborg, wasn't it, really? Well, I remember he was putting, Pedersen and in a bit of a box there. So I'd say probably it might be, Allenberg, possibly, that you see Van der Poel start to really open things up. That'll be my guess, because that'll be, how many kilometers in is that? That is 161 kilometers in. So that's going to be 90 odd kilometers still to go. But it provides such a good opportunity. Like the Arenberg is got to be one of probably the most feared cobbled sectors of the whole race. I know there are two other 5-star sectors, but there's something about the Arenberg which has just got this really fearsome element to it. And it's also worth noting they've changed the approach to it, so they don't have that weird kind of dog leg, which was just god awful last year. Let me just add that in. They've added in kind of like a weird chicane beforehand. I don't know how to really explain it, but basically it's just a little chicane to try and slow him down a little bit. But I think, yeah, you might see Van der Poel go the Arenberg. I think, really see what Pogacar's made of.
You basically think the break is going to be a non-factor once more in Paris-Roubaix?
Pretty much, yeah. I think it probably will be. If last year is anything to go by, I think that the break is going to spend 2 hours trying to form, and then realistically get brought back probably by the Arenberg Trench. If it can survive past then, maybe they've got an okay shot of surviving further into a race and still snagging a top 10. There's always been that belief that if you can get in the breakaway, you can survive further. But for modern day of racing, with the way that things get opened up earlier and earlier, attacks-wise, I think, the break is becoming a less fruitful option by the year.
Well, I mean, speaking of riders who like attacking out, Tadej Pogacar, their world champion, looking to emulate Mathieu van der Poel from last year, being the world champion to win both Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix in the same year. Debutant in the race, he's taken KOMs here, there and everywhere on the course in recons, with or without motor pacing. I'm not quite sure. Heard murmurs about motor pacing there as well. Okay. But Strava doesn't matter when it comes to monument racing. And how do you think Pogacar is going to fare here? And then we'll get to the second part. How is he going to win it?
I think it'll be like a duck to water, to be honest with you. I think he'll be just fine. Based upon the fact that he's able to survive the Ronde van Vlaanderen and the cobbles there, I think realistically Pogacar shouldn't have too much trouble with the Paris-Roubaix cobbles. Yes, they are more severe, and it's different because they're, the cobbled bergs of Flanders definitely favour Pogacar more because he's lighter than the absolute pan-flat, raw power sectors that Paris-Roubaix offer. So I think that Pogacar will still do very well, but I do feel like there's also this element of people generally do better in this race when they're a little bit older and they've had multiple editions under their belt to get that experience. And also Pogacar is just quite a bit lighter than a lot of people. He is kind of outside the range of somebody who would typically be doing well in this race. Saying that, he's also Tadej Pogacar, and he is an absolute freak of nature. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility to believe that Pogacar, because he is, at the end of the day, such a fantastic rouleur, like he's just everything. It's not out of the realms that Pogacar could do some real damage in this race.
I mean, the rider that many people have been talking about that he's mirroring almost is Bernard Hinault, who has won Paris-Roubaix and obviously a very good Grand Tour rider. Second most Grand Tours during Eddie Merckx in his career. And yeah, but that aside, Tadej Pogacar, how does he win this, do you think? Because I don't see him out sprinting if he takes Mathieu van der Poel or Jasper Philipsen to the Velodrome. So, I mean, there's only one way, really, isn't there?
Yeah, there is only really one way, which is that Pogacar needs to go solo very much like he did in Flanders. And I don't think that's beyond the realms of possibility. I think he'll especially be targeting those 5-star sectors, the Monzon-Pével and the Carrefour de l'Arbre. I expect that he'll just get through the Arenberg Trench and just, get through that and just see what's happening. But I think, Monzon-Pével and Carrefour de l'Arbre, he'll be trying to really put the hammer down. That'll be my expectation. He's also got a very strong team here. It's also worth mentioning because he's got 2 teammates in here who have finished on the podium of this race as well in the previous editions, which is Nils Pollitt and Florian Vermeersch. So it's no slouch for team alongside Antonio Morgado and Tim Wellens currently. This is why I said that Philipsen needs to be up there in his best game, because I think that Pogacar will have at least Pollitt there later on into the race. So that's why Mathieu van der Poel needs Philipsen there, because if Pogacar has Pollitt there as well, if Van der Poel manages to attack, it's possible that Pogacar will still have a rider there to try and bring Van der Poel back. Yeah, that's why Philipsen needs to be in good form as well in order for Van der Poel to be successful. So it's a really interesting dynamic we've got going into this race of multiple teams having multiple options.
But, I don't understand how you can win the Tour de France and do well at Paris-Roubaix. He is absolutely a freak of nature. You can have the numbers, you can have all this, but if you ever tried riding on these things, the Arenberg Forest is horrible. It's not meant for riding bikes. And the way Mathieu van der Poel just floats across it, and then also Tadej Pogacar will have to be able to do that as well in order to just be in contention with this other super freak. So, yeah, it's incredulous in a way.
It's also a thing of like bike handling as well. I'd say that generally Van der Poel, and I think we can all kind of agree, Van der Poel is a better bike handler than Tadej Pogacar is, and that does play a large part in it. And being able to surf over those cobbles, that cyclocross background really does pay dividends a lot of the time. You see with riders who do cyclocross generally do quite well in Paris-Roubaix. So I definitely think that favours Van der Poel as well. Whereas Pogacar, generally people on debut don't do that great in this race. It's not completely unheard of, but I'm just saying that the kind of the data says that people who'd come here on debut at that sort of age that Pogacar is generally don't do very well in this race. But it is Tadej Pogacar, so therefore he might well buck that trend.
There is one rider who's coming to mind, but I don't know if I'm wrong with that. Wasn't Sonny Colbrelli? Wasn't he a debutant when he won?
Yeah, but that was a completely wacky edition.
Yeah, that's true. That was all over the place.
There was all sorts of caveats going in there. But yeah, you're right.
Pithy as well. He was doing quite well.
Yeah, Pithy did good on debut.
But neither of these are winning the Tour de France.
That's true. But Pithy didn't win the race either. Like he
did well. True.
And also Pithy's heavier. Like he can probably generate just more raw power than Poggy does. He just doesn't have a watts per kilo.
Would you try and send Nils Pollard in the break or Antonio Morgado or someone like that? Or is that too much?
I mean, it'd be great if you could do. I just don't think there's any way in hell that any other team's going to allow that to happen. That'll be that's my kind of belief in that.
Do you think UAE are going to be taking control of the race?
It might be. Just because, I don't know, maybe Alpecin, after being like, oh, you won Tour of Flanders, off you go. It's up to you now, big boys. I reckon they might do. You might see UE wanting to take control, but also being sort of forced to take control by some of the other big teams.
But I mean, we might as well switch the focus away from Pogacar and Mathieu van der Poel. Mats Pedersen did split the two in Tour of Flanders. He did finish second. He was also third last year, and he has this, ambition of winning a monument. Why not? He's come very close. And he thinks that Paris-Roubaix is his best shot at winning a monument. Is it? I don't know. I mean, he's pretty good suited to Milan-San Remo. Tour of Flanders, he's done pretty well. That's the one he's done best at. And then Paris-Roubaix, third last year, fourth the year before. And he was in a very good position as well. He said if he had Jonathan Milan, maybe things would have been a bit different in that finale.
Yeah, I think if this could happen, it's going to be here. I think Pedersen could win this race, honestly. It's not out of the realms of possibility. He looked super good at Flanders. The only thing which really let him down was just when the road started going uphill. I think that he is more suited to Roubaix, and I think that kind of the time is right. He's got a good team here. He's in good form. As long as he doesn't get one of these mystery illnesses that seems to plague people the days before a big event, I think that Pedersen is up there as one of the contenders for this race, and backed up by a strong team at the moment of Matthias Vatsek, Dan Holer, Jonathan Milan and Jasper Stuyven, who was also incredibly integral to him finishing second in the Ronde. I think Pedersen's got an absolutely great shot. He's going up against Van der Poel, who might have taken a little bit of a confidence knock after Flanders, and Pogacar, who's an unknown entity who you don't really know how he's going to be going. So I think Pedersen actually has got probably his best shot ever of winning a monument, and I think that this probably provides his best opportunity to do so. Probably more than Il Lombardia does, let's say that.
I was just going to see, I have an idea that he finished on the podium in the junior edition. No, he actually won it in 2013. Yeah, we know the correlation between the junior Paris-Roubaix and winning is not that great. I mean, Tom Pidcock has won this in the past, and so has Geraint Thomas. And I don't think Geraint Thomas is winning this anytime soon, but he has actually been part of it. So
you know that Thymen Arensman has finished on the podium of a Paris-Roubaix.
Wow.
It was an under 23 or the junior version, and there you go. That just goes to show the trend between, do you know that I think Carlos Rodriguez has finished inside the top 10 of a Paris-Roubaix under 23? Just goes to show what kind of wacky results you get from that.
Matthias Skjelmose Jensen was third in 2018.
Yeah, exactly, but it's like, come on.
But no, Tadej Pogacar. Nevertheless, so Mats Pedersen, we'll see what happens there. Ineos Grenadiers, that was one that I was kind of thinking about. I always feel like Ghana is destined to win this. Obviously with his time trial background, he's good on the cobbles. He got his best result ever in Tour of Flanders last week, and he also finished sixth last year in Paris-Roubaix, a best result there. So Ineos Grenadiers, and obviously Josh Tarling, if he can actually stay in the race and not get disqualified by his team.
Yeah, that's true. That combination of Tarling and Gann will be really good. I think if we don't know the whole squad, but if they fill this out with Ben Turner, Connor Swift, Magnus Sheffield, those sorts of riders, I think this will be a really strong squad. I think Ghana does realistically provide their best option, especially since Tarling got ill before Tour of Flanders. Again, another one of these crazy illnesses that just go around before big events. So I don't know how he's going. So realistically, Ghana would be their main man. And like you say, Ghana's done very well in this race in the past. Very suited to this race, like you say. He probably realistically needs to go solo, but he does have a very fast finish. So it depends who he'd be going up against. But by and large, you see the people at the top of this race. If he goes up against Van der Poel, or Pedersen, or Philipsen, he's going to have a pretty tough time of winning. But Ghana realistically is their best shot of doing well here. How they do well here is going to be basically trying to get through the Arenberg Trench and then capitalizing on people looking at each other and maybe trying to sneak up the road with another secondary leader like a Pollitt or a Stuyven or something like that, and trying to like work together to get ahead of eventually of an inevitable Pogacar or Mathieu van der Poel attack. I think that's their best option. And then just try and stay ahead of it, basically. That's the key to winning, guys, is just stay ahead of the favourites. You'll be just fine. It sounds so much easier said than done.
I mean, that was kind of their tactic in Tour of Flanders with Ghana.
Yeah, just do that. Try do, honestly, kind of what you did in Flanders. Try get somebody like Connor Swift or Tarling or whoever in the break and try and get up to them and let them kind of take you along as best you can, because Roubaix is just such a brutal race where kind of everybody's putting in a very similar effort, because it is just, the cobbles are so hard. There is draft, obviously, don't get me wrong, because these guys are still flying over the cobbles. But yeah, Ineos would be wise to try and repeat what they basically did in Flanders.
So, I mean, we might as well come to Team Visma Lisa Bike, and Wout van Aert obviously doing very well at Tour of Flanders after there were so many worries, question marks over his form. Were we seeing the ultimate decline? But, I mean, he kind of answered his critics. 4th place, just missing out on the podium again in Tour of Flanders. Obviously, he's been there before, but he's also been 4th before. And Paris-Roubaix, he kind of had a better fit with in some respect. He's been 2nd in the past. He got done over by the Philipsen Van der Poel double act. And obviously, we were robbed of seeing him last year, courtesy of that Dwars-Flandern crash. But Dylan Van Baal, his teammate, has won Paris-Roubaix. This Melisse bike, are they a dark horse? Could they feature on the podium, top 5?
Yeah, I think Wout could definitely feature on the podium if Flanders is anything to go by, because yeah, it's him, Van der Poel, Poggy and Pedersen who are the big 4 that people are looking at. You know, Ghana's going to get a look in there as well. And some other, like a Kung or something might get a look in, Pollitt possibly. There are some other variables going on there, but in theory, Wout should be aiming for a podium, I think is a realistic goal, because, like you say, I think this race is more suited to him than a Flanders is. He seemed to struggle really when basically things went absolutely full gas, and he's a bit better when it was a little bit less than that and just kind of like a more of a time trial effort. So I think that Wout still has a decent chance of doing well in this race. I just think that a win's going to be really difficult, because it's going to require other people to kind of underestimate him and let him get up the road ahead of them. Because even like a sprint at the end of a long day, like Flanders as well, he just shows that when sprinting at the end of a long race, a monument especially, his legs just kind of pack in a little bit. So he really needs to be solo in order to win. But I think he could podium still, yeah.
But before we come to our predictions, we might just do some of our outsiders. And, I mean, we've covered quite a few riders, but the top 10 of Paris-Roubaix always kind of throws in some weird names here and there. Benyam Gamay, I know many people are tired of him. Hearing me talk about him, but I really wanted to get a good monument result this year. I think many people do. One guy I was thinking about, which I haven't heard anyone talk about, Arnaud Demar. He hasn't been at this race since 2021. He's been in the top 10 before, so the Frenchman could maybe do something here. Who else are we looking at? Stefan Kung, we haven't talked about him. He's obviously finished on the podium. He's finished top 5 as well last year, I believe. And Alexander Kristoff, who's very good at Tour of Flanders, or was a few years ago, but never has any success in Paris-Roubaix. Yeah, Patrick, who are you kind of looking at? Ivan Garcia Cortina snuck into the top 10 as well in the Tour of Flanders.
He's going to be finishing out, filling out the top 10. It's going to depend on, usually you get a bit of a bigger group coming in for that rest of the top 10. And we saw Tim Van Dijk last year getting relegated from 8th or so. Yeah, I think it was 8th place. Anyway, so you've got plenty of people who have finished inside the top 10 before, like I say, Kung, Lawrence Rex of Intermarché has finished inside the top 10 here before. Yves Lampart as well. Obviously, Tim and Mick van Dijk are also here. Piffy, 7th place last year. He's come back. Jordi Meus was top 10 last year. He's also here. So Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe has certainly got plentiful options going into this race. Søren Vanderschold was 9th last year. It was certainly worthwhile thinking about as well. Abrahamsen, kind of a king of the breakaways for UNOX as well. He's also well worthwhile thinking about. Alex Sagart, actually, for Lotto. Good time trialist, big Belgian unit. He kind of fits the cookie cutter of somebody who should be doing well here. And maybe somebody like Ugo Hofstetter, if it comes down to a sprint, might do something, dare I say. Mike Turnison as well. and Ballerini for Astana. Very good in the Tour of Flanders. So I'd expect those two to go well here too.
But anyways, with that, we might as well come to our favorite part of the show, the predictions. And I mean, Patrick, who is your top three?
Gosh, this is the million pound question, isn't it? I think in third place, I am gonna go with Filippo Ganna. In second place, Mathieu van der Poel. And Mads Pedersen to win.
Wow. I almost thought you were going to say Tadej Pogacar there for a second.
No. Not brave enough for that.
Well, somebody is. Third place, Steph or Wout van Aert. No, who was your third place? Wout van Aert.
Ganna.
Okay, Wout van Aert. Third place, Wout van Aert. Second place, Mads Pedersen. And for a second year in a row, the world champion does the Tour of Flanders Paris-Roubaix double. Sorry, Tadej. I have a very bad curse picking non-winners, so good luck with that one.
Yeah, I've actually just looked at Bet365. I've seen his odds just completely plummeting down. Could pick him up at 50-1 now.
But, I mean, that is basically it for our Paris-Roubaix preview show. Make sure to hit the like button to help us out. Subscribe to the channel if you've enjoyed it. And comment down below who you think is going to win. Maybe you'll get it more right than me or Patrick. But it should be a very good one. And we hope to see you in the next one. And check out Patrick's own channel as well. I'll do cycling. The link will be in the description. But as always, thank you very much for watching. And we will see you in the next one.